So my question is, in general, there's not a lot of, so related to your story with the pageant, interpreters. So there's a black deaf individual. Do you think that they realize that I need a black interpreter? That having a black interpreter will help support themselves? Do you get what I mean? Not necessarily, but it does depend on the situation. But with that specific pageant, I wanted to emphasize the need of having an interpreter there that would match me. But I didn't emphasize on the black part of it. Do you have any questions about this? So obviously I think we need to have more interpreters of color. Also, that white interpreters need to consider the importance of racial background and incorporate that into their interpretations. I think it's important for a lot of interpreters to know, to be informed about other races in their culture, because the deaf person could be black or white, it doesn't matter. But say the presenter is black. The interpreter still needs to incorporate the different culture aspect. So do you mean the interpreter themselves is white, and then they're interpreting for a person of color? So that interpreter should have that background information about their culture and their knowledge in order to interpret for that person? Is that what you mean? No. I mean, all interpreters should know more cultural aspects, because you never know who you're going to interpret for. Whether it's, if it's a hearing presenter, whether they're black or they're white. So the interpreter can expose that deaf person to another culture. So I think what you mean is interpreters in general should have that cultural knowledge. So they can interpret accurately for whoever the consumer is. So the interpreter can expose that deaf person to other cultures. Yes.
You're gonna take one?
Yes.
It's the worst. Sit down forever.
So you're saying it's best if the interpreter has that diverse cultural knowledge and background. so they can portray that to the consumer. So they can include those cultural aspects in their interpretations, right?
Yes. But also, the deaf person they're interpreting for will be exposed to other cultures. You mean like cultural mediation, right? Yeah, kind of. I can't really explain it the way I want to.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by exposure to the deaf person.
Well, use an example. All right. So if I'm a white interpreter, let's say, and I'm interpreting for a black presenter, and the deaf person who's in the audience is white. Maybe the consumer has, I've never seen a black person, but maybe they're not as exposed to black culture. So, I don't know, I can't really, I don't know, I can't come up with an example.
Just quickly.
You are.
So let me clarify something.
She's messing up.
I think that the point is, it doesn't matter whether the presenter is black or white, Asian, but if the consumer is a white person. But my job as the interpreter is to culturally mediate. So they have to be skilled in that area to incorporate the cultural aspects.
Okay, I got questions. So here's my question. I'm white, and I want to be an interpreter. I can't change that. So how do I match a deaf person if they're black, per se? You know, how do I improve my skills in order to match them?
Later.
Yeah.
Because I have to interpret soon. So
I have an activity that we're going to do later that will address that.
I have a question about your background. You grew up in the black community, or did you grow up in the white community? I'm just curious what your upbringing was like. What kind of culture did you feel like you incorporated in your upbringing?
Alright, I'm making sure everyone's on the same page here. So in my family, there's 4 of us. We're all black, but we have a really big extended family. There's a big variety. It's very multicultural in my family. But because we are a deaf family, we typically stick together. We can socialize with everyone else. And be involved in their... We typically stay with each other because we have our own culture. But we can socialize with the various groups of people in our family. So my home life right now, my husband is white, so we do have a biracial family. So we don't really identify ourselves with one group. We have multiple connections in different cultures. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. was just interested in your upbringing, if you felt that you were, your culture was very strong and identified with the Black community, or if you didn't think much about it when you were younger, or how do you, really identify? Is it, an American? Is it being Black?